What if I told you that my friend's husband offered me a job, but only if I provided him with special favors in return? And what if I also told you that telling my friend the truth would cost me a friendship that had lasted for years? This is a story about betrayal, moral dilemmas, and the devastating price of doing what's right. Stay with me until the very end, because what happened next will shock you, and the way this story concludes will leave you questioning what you would have done in my shoes. Trust me, you don't want to miss how this all unfolded. But before I dive into this emotional roller coaster, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with someone who might need to hear this story. Your support means everything to me, and it helps me continue sharing real stories that matter. So let me take you back to where this all began. I had been married for several years, to a man who had very traditional views about marriage and family roles. From the very beginning of our relationship, he made it crystal clear that he believed the man should be the provider, while the woman should stay home, take care of the house, and raise the children. When we got married, I actually agreed to this arrangement. I had studied. I had my profession. I had worked hard to build my career, but I chose to put it all aside because I genuinely believed this was the best choice for our family. For years, this arrangement seemed to work. I dedicated myself completely to being a wife and mother, managing our household, caring for our children, while he went out every day to provide for us financially. I threw myself into this role with everything I had, convinced that I was doing the right thing for our family's stability and happiness. But then everything changed. Last year, our marriage fell apart completely. We went through a difficult divorce that was caused by a series of problems that had been building up over time. Suddenly, I found myself in a position I had never imagined I would be in. After years of depending entirely on my ex-husband financially, I was now on my own. He did pay me temporary support for a while, which I was grateful for, but I knew this arrangement wouldn't last forever. I was still young. I was still capable of working, and I understood that this financial support was meant to be temporary while I got back on my feet. The reality hit me hard that I needed to find a job and become financially independent again, not just for myself, but also to contribute to supporting our children. The problem was that finding employment turned out to be much more challenging than I had anticipated. Even though I had a professional degree and education, I had been out of the workforce for so many years that I had absolutely no recent work experience in my field. It was as if my professional skills had become rusty from years of not being used. Everywhere I applied, employers wanted candidates with recent experience, and I simply couldn't provide that. I spent weeks searching for opportunities, sending out applications, going to interviews, but rejection after rejection started to wear me down. It was incredibly frustrating and disheartening to realize that the decision I had made years ago to focus on my family had inadvertently made it nearly impossible for me to re-enter the professional world. That's when my longtime friend stepped in to help. This woman had been one of my closest friends since we were teenagers. We had grown up together. We had gotten married around the same time. We had shared so many important moments in our lives. She was like a sister to me, and when she saw how much I was struggling to find work, she offered to talk to her husband about potential opportunities at his company. Her husband worked for a fairly large company, and she thought maybe there might be some position available that could help me get back into the workforce while I worked on updating my skills and getting specialized training in my field. It seemed like the perfect solution, a temporary stepping stone that would allow me to earn some income while I prepared to eventually return to my original profession. When she spoke to her husband about my situation, he seemed receptive to the idea. He told her that there might indeed be some positions available at his company, and he suggested that I come in to meet with him personally to discuss what opportunities might be a good fit for my skills and experience level. I was incredibly grateful and excited about this possibility. Having any job at that point would have been a huge relief, and the fact that it was coming through such a close friend made it feel even more special. I felt like finally, things were starting to look up after such a difficult period in my life, so I arranged to meet with her husband at his office. When I arrived, he was very professional and friendly. He explained that there was indeed a position available that wouldn't pay a tremendous amount of money, but it would be enough for me to start getting organized financially while I worked toward getting back into my original field of expertise. The job seemed perfect for my current situation. He told me that he would put me through a trial period, which is standard practice in most companies. This would give both of us a chance to see if I could adapt to the work environment and if I would be a good fit for the team. I was absolutely thrilled with this opportunity and threw myself into the trial period with complete dedication and enthusiasm. During those weeks of the trial period, I worked harder than I had worked in years. I was determined to prove that I deserved this opportunity and that I could be a valuable employee despite my lack of recent work experience. I arrived early, stayed late when necessary, paid attention to every detail, and tried to learn everything I could about the company and my responsibilities. But what happened at the end of that trial period changed everything and revealed a side of this man that I never could have imagined existed. When the trial period was coming to an end, he called me into his office for what I assumed would be the conversation where he would officially offer me the permanent position. I walked into that meeting feeling confident and optimistic. I had worked so hard, I had done everything right, and I genuinely believed that I had proven my worth as an employee. But the conversation that followed was nothing like what I had expected. Instead of discussing my performance or offering me the job, he began steering the conversation in a completely different direction. He started making comments that made me increasingly uncomfortable, and then he made his intentions shockingly clear. He told me that he could give me not just the job I had been doing during the trial period, but even a better position within his company, with better pay and more responsibilities. But there was a condition. He wanted me to provide him with what he called special favors, and it was immediately obvious what kind of favors he was talking about. I was completely stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my best friend's husband, someone I had known for years, someone I had trusted, someone who was supposed to be helping me during one of the most difficult periods of my life. Instead, he was trying to take advantage of my desperate situation to get something from me that was completely inappropriate and wrong. I immediately refused his proposition. I told him that what he was suggesting was absolutely unacceptable and that I was shocked and disgusted by his behavior. We got into a heated argument where I made it very clear that I would never agree to such an arrangement under any circumstances. His response was even more shocking than his initial proposition. He looked at me calmly and said that in that case, he didn't think I had the right profile to work at his company. It was obvious blackmail. He was essentially telling me that if I wanted the job, I would have to agree to his terms, and if I didn't agree, then I wouldn't be getting the position. I was furious and completely disgusted by his behavior. I told him that if those were his conditions, then I absolutely did not want to work at his company. I gathered my things and walked out of his office, slamming the door behind me. The entire drive home, my mind was racing with thoughts about what had just happened and what I should do next. The situation was incredibly complicated because this wasn't just about a job or workplace harassment from a stranger. This was my best friend's husband, and I was faced with the terrible dilemma of whether or not to tell her what had happened. I kept thinking about all the possible consequences of telling her. What if she didn't believe me? What if she got angry at me instead of at him? What if she chose to stay with him and decided to cut me out of her life to protect her marriage? These were all very real possibilities, and the thought of losing my closest friend on top of everything else I was going through was almost unbearable. But then something happened that made my decision even more complicated. As soon as I got home, I received a text message from my friend. She wrote that her husband had told her that things hadn't worked out with the job, that I hadn't been able to adapt to the work environment, and that I had decided not to take the position. He had already gotten to her first with his version of the story, painting me as someone who simply couldn't handle the job. When I read her message, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Here was this man who had just sexually harassed me and tried to blackmail me, and now he was lying to his wife about what had really happened. He was protecting himself by making it seem like I was the problem, like I was the one who had failed. I responded to her message very briefly, just saying that things hadn't worked out, but that we could talk about it later. I needed time to think about how to handle this situation and whether I should tell her the truth about what her husband had really done. I spent the entire night thinking about what the right thing to do would be. Part of me wanted to just let it go, to avoid the potential drama and complications that would come from revealing the truth. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't keep this secret. She deserved to know what kind of person she was married to, and I deserved to have my reputation cleared of his lies. The next day, I made my decision. I went to her house at a time when I knew her husband would be at work, and I told her everything that had happened. I explained exactly what her husband had proposed to me, how he had tried to blackmail me into agreeing to his terms, and how he had then lied to her about why I didn't get the job. Initially, her reaction gave me hope. She seemed shocked and upset by what I was telling her. She said she believed me. She thanked me for being honest with her, and she said she was going to confront her husband about his behavior. She seemed genuinely grateful that I had chosen to tell her the truth rather than keeping it hidden. I told her that whatever decision she made about her marriage, I would be there to support her. I wasn't trying to break up her marriage or tell her what to do with her life. I just wanted her to know the truth so she could make informed decisions about her relationship. For about a week after our conversation, we didn't speak. I wanted to give her space to process what I had told her, and to have whatever conversation she needed to have with her husband. But after a week passed, I started sending her messages to check on how she was doing, and to see if she needed any support. She would respond to my messages, but I could sense that something had changed. She would tell me that she and her husband were still working things out, that they were having conversations about what had happened, but I could feel her pulling away from me. Our conversations became shorter and less frequent. She would take longer to respond to my messages, and sometimes she wouldn't respond at all. This is where the story takes its most heartbreaking turn. Gradually, I realized what was happening. While she had believed my story about what her husband had done, she had ultimately decided to stay in her marriage and try to work things out with him. And in order to make that work, she felt that she needed to distance herself from me. My presence in her life had become a constant reminder of her husband's betrayal, and maintaining our friendship was too complicated while she was trying to rebuild her marriage. I understood her position, even though it broke my heart. She wasn't angry at me. She hadn't accused me of lying, and she hadn't blamed me for what happened. But she had made the difficult decision that preserving her marriage was more important than preserving our friendship, and that meant I had to be removed from her life. So I made the painful decision to respect her choice and step back completely. I stopped sending messages. I stopped calling. I stopped trying to maintain contact. If she wanted to focus on her marriage without the complication of our friendship, then I would give her that space. Since then, we haven't had any contact at all. It's been months now, and the silence between us has become permanent. I've managed to find employment elsewhere. I'm working on getting additional training and certifications in my field, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life after my divorce. In many ways, things are going well for me now. But I still feel incredibly sad about losing such an important friendship. The situation turned out exactly as I had feared it might when I was deciding whether or not to tell her the truth. I lost my friend just as I had worried I would, even though I had done what I believed was the right thing. Looking back, I still believe I made the correct choice in telling her what happened. She deserved to know the truth about her husband's behavior, and I deserved to have my reputation cleared of his lies. But that doesn't make the loss of our friendship any less painful or any less disappointing. This experience taught me some hard lessons about the complexity of human relationships and the difficult choices we sometimes have to make between different types of loyalty. I learned that sometimes doing the right thing comes with a cost that's almost too high to bear, but that doesn't mean we should avoid doing what's right. I also learned that people will make choices based on what they believe is best for their own lives, even when those choices hurt the people who care about them. My friend wasn't wrong for choosing her marriage over our friendship, just as I wasn't wrong for choosing honesty over keeping a painful secret. The whole experience was a reminder that life is complicated, that good people sometimes find themselves in impossible situations, and that there aren't always happy endings even when everyone involved is trying to do what they think is right. Even though this story doesn't have the ending I would have hoped for, I can sleep peacefully at night knowing that I acted with integrity and honesty. I chose truth over convenience, and while that choice cost me a dear friendship, it also allowed me to maintain my self-respect and clear conscience. This is actually a true story that was shared with me by one of my followers on another social media platform. They trusted me with their experience because they needed someone to listen and to validate that they had made the right choice in an incredibly difficult situation. I want to thank them for their courage in sharing such a personal and painful experience. If you found this story meaningful, or if it resonated with your own experiences, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your engagement helps me continue sharing these important stories that remind us we're not alone in facing life's most challenging moments. And please, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on this situation. What would you have done if you were in her position? Do you think she made the right choice in telling her friend the truth? These conversations help us all learn and grow from each other's experiences.